The search for alien life has reached all new heights in recent times. Cosmological study has never been better. UFO sightings are through the roof, and the world's governments are finally beginning to pull back the veil with regards to what they know. For many, it's now only a matter of time before a discovery is made, especially as there are growing theories that not only is alien life out there, but it could also be very nearby. This is Unveiled, and today we're answering the extraordinary question: are there aliens in our galaxy and on Earth? Do you need the big questions answered? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe to Unveiled for more clips like this one, and ring the bell for more thought-provoking content.
For decades, one of the most important mysteries facing humanity has been whether or not we're alone in the universe. Space is vast and, so far, empty, but with so many stars and planets floating around in the galactic ether, the argument goes that one of them must be able to host life as well. But just how likely is that possibility? And how close to us could it really be? A new study published in the Astrophysical Journal in June 2020 has recontextualized the search for extraterrestrial life by taking a fresh look at the famous Drake equation. The study, led by researchers at the University of Nottingham in the UK, guesstimates the number of SETI, or communicating extraterrestrial intelligent civilizations, that could be in our galaxy, putting the figure at somewhere between 4 and 211, but most likely a few dozen, or about 36. So, there's more than a few things to understand here. First, the civilizations that the team are proposing would all be able to send radio signals out into space, much like we can, which is what qualifies them as communicating. Next, and more significantly however, researchers reached this new number of potential alien societies by developing a calculation called the astrobiological Copernican limit, which is essentially a more specific alien probability analysis than the much more famous Drake equation. The Drake equation, devised by the astrophysicist Frank Drake in 1961, sets out to estimate the number of potential alien civilizations too, only it's infamously broad in its approach. The equation looks at 7 criteria, none of which we conclusively know the answer to, including the rate of star creation and the possible lifetime of a communicating civilization. As a result, because of all the moving parts, the various attempts to solve the Drake equation have generated wildly different outcomes down the years, alternately suggesting that there could be anything from 0 other civilizations, for example, to tens of millions of them. The astrobiological Copernican limit calculation, however, significantly streamlines and tightens the method. Crucially, it works on the assumption that life on Earth develops scientifically rather than at random, and that intelligent life on an alien planet would therefore evolve in a similar way to how it has done on Earth. That is, it would take roughly 5 billion years to get to this point. It then takes into account the estimate number of planets within the habitable zones of their respective stars in the Milky Way, and hey presto, it deems that there's potentially between 4 and 211 communicating civilizations in our galaxy, or about 36. Much like the Drake equation though, the astrobiological Copernican principle isn't without its fair share of problems. Again, we can't accurately know the correct figures to input into it, with estimates on the number of anything in the Milky Way tending to significantly differ from source to source. We simply don't know the exact number of stars or exoplanets in the galaxy, and haven't yet even confidently observed an exomoon. So while this new method is quicker, neater, more specialized, and arguably more authentic, it is by no means definitive. We're still very much at the stage of, there could be 36 alien civilizations in the Milky Way, but there also really couldn't be. There's also the fact that we're still not absolutely certain what caused intelligent life to evolve even on Earth itself, so the assumption that it even could happen widely across the universe under what might be deemed the right conditions is still a vast, but in this case vital, leap. The whole estimating the lifespan of a communicating civilization thing is really tricky to do. We only have ourselves to measure against, and though humans have been on Earth for 200,000 years or so, we've only been able to send radio signals for about a century. And we have no idea how long we'll survive as a radio signaling communicating species. This means our best guess at how long such a civilization could last has only one very modest data point to work from, of at least 100 years. While this latest method to count unseen aliens isn't infallible, however, it does prompt us to think about the search for extraterrestrial life from a range of other perspectives too, which is always fun. Another takeaway from this study, for example, is the calculated probable distance between us and the next civilization, with it suggesting that the closest alien group could be 17,000 light-years away. This means that even if we knew with 100% accuracy that there really was an intelligent communicating civilization that distance away from us, well, we'd be waiting some 34,000 years after sending a simple message to get a similarly simple response back. As for the prospects of conversing with such a society in depth, there aren't any. Not only that, but 17,000 years is obviously a long time, and more than enough time for a civilization, ours or theirs, to disappear for any number of reasons. Barring some sort of far future immortality technique, at the very least, anyone alive to blindly send the initial message would be long dead before the reply came through. What's even more disheartening though, is that even if there is an alien civilization out there, or even 36 civilizations or more, how likely is it that they're sending out radio signals to try and communicate in the first place? Arguably, not very. Humankind has been sending radio messages into space for decades, the most famous of which being the Arecibo message in 1974, but it's not automatic that other species would do the same thing. While the astrobiological Copernican principle assumes that other life will have developed scientifically and somewhat similarly to ours, it could still be completely and fundamentally different to us, with zero use or knowledge of our communication methods. Nevertheless, there has been some cause for belief in recent decades too, that perhaps an alien message would be receivable and decipherable for us. The most famous of all incoming signals was the WOW signal picked up by the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University in 1977. When translated, it amounts to a string of 6 characters, 6EQUJ5, and has been variably called the most likely candidate for a true alien communication. In 2012, we even sent a response to the signal from the Arecibo Observatory in the form of 10,000 tweets all tagged with #ChasingUFOs. More recently, notable radio signals from space were picked up by CHIME, the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, a radio telescope in 2018. CHIME detected what are known as FRBs, fast radio bursts, coming from another galaxy 500 million light-years away, repeating at intervals of every 16 days. But could it be a sign of alien life, or could these interest-piquing FRBs instead be coming from a young neutron star or an incredibly bright supernova, as per other theories on what they really are? Either way, as they're from outside the Milky Way, they're not one of the 36 civilizations proposed by the astrobiological Copernican principle, and if CHIME's FRBs are alien in origin, it'd take us hundreds of millions of years to send a response with current technology, a significant portion of Earth's life so far. If anything, instances like the CHIME signal prove just how immense the task at hand really is. With a new calculation, the University of Nottingham team has devised a way to argue for multiple alien civilizations within the Milky Way, but the Milky Way is just one average-sized example in amongst billions more galaxies in the observable universe. So while we may never be able to talk to distant aliens in our own galaxy or beyond, the belief that we're not alone isn't likely to disappear either. The astrobiological Copernican limit is one attempt amongst many to estimate how many intelligent species are out there, but until we have direct evidence that anything else exists, it's impossible to tell how accurate the calculations are.
Around the year 50 BC, the Roman poet Titus Lucretius is said to have written about tribes of men living on various Earths scattered throughout the universe. We know then that the concept of alien life has at least been thought about for more than 2,000 years. But while early depictions suggest that life on other planets would be similar to humans, and despite modern pop culture tending toward innately humanoid characters, it's unlikely to be that way in reality. The little green man motif or the glowing red Martian have become film and TV staples to represent any life not of this world. Thanks to stories like E.T. and Star Trek, aliens, in our mind's eye, are typically depicted as having followed something very close to our own evolutionary track. They're bipedal hominids with larger-than-average heads, elongated limbs with multi-digit hands, plus large eyes and navel cavities that make them typically reliant on their vision and sense of smell. They're not like us, but they're not exactly unlike us either. This is because, being human and having evolved on Earth, we've become accustomed to expecting adaptations in others similar to those we have witnessed within ourselves. However, alien life has the potential to evolve well beyond anything we can even begin to imagine. Even on the massive assumption that alien life would be based on the same element as all life on Earth is, carbon, there's room for endless variety. And the chances that the same evolutionary milestones will have occurred in other creatures on other planets are minimal. We know that mammals rose to become the dominant class of species on this planet, for example, but how likely is it that the precise conditions to allow for this will have been replicated elsewhere? Answer: not likely at all. So what could the dominating life on an alien planet look like instead? Just based again on the only version of life we know about on Earth, the possibilities go on and on. They could be vertebrates or insect-like beings, maybe with 6 legs, no legs, or wings. They might have a skeleton or an exoskeleton, or no bones at all. They may give birth, lay seeds, or lay eggs. And how might they perceive the universe? Again, based on just successful examples of life on Earth, they could rely on vision and hearing, but also sonar, pheromones, and front-feeling antennae. There's really no predicting it, even when we do limit the possibilities to carbon only. However, it's long been speculated that alien life could also evolve from an altogether different elemental base. While as far as we know it may be possible for life to grow out of any member of the periodic table, some elements are deemed more likely than others. After carbon, silicon is widely tipped as the most likely because it resembles carbon so well. It's one of the most abundant chemicals in the universe, and it, like carbon, can connect to 4 different atoms at the same time. Silicon is strong, flexible, reliable, and there's plenty of it, all of which makes it a primary candidate to be an alternative building block for life. As to what silicon-based life would actually look like, according to our current understanding of the constructs of living organisms, it would likely be primitive and simple and lacking the complexity of life on Earth. But unfortunately, we can't know for sure until we find direct evidence of it. The assumption when searching for intelligent alien life, however, is that even if it isn't carbon-based, whatever element it is based on must allow for it to eventually evolve into something more complex. Again, from our point of view, there are precious few rules to follow here, and potentially endless possibilities. Life could be swimming through the methane seas of Titan right now, or bouncing its way through the clouds of a gas giant somewhere. If it boasts a wholly different chemical makeup, then we'll always struggle to discover it. It's one reason why we so often allow our imaginations to go bigger, to skip the individual alien creatures themselves and move straight toward the wider civilizations. But just as alien biology will have evolved utterly independent from life on Earth, so too will alien groups and societies. As humans, we're part of a mammalian social structure, working toward individual species survival and a higher function. The social order for aliens could be totally different, though. One proposed example of how different it could be is the hive mind. Here, most of the population are simply drones, acting as the arms and legs of a core group or brain. The group is united under a single purpose, with the collective need always valued over the individual. So while independent thought, as in human society, can give rise to interspecies disagreements, fluctuating relationships, and sometimes war, a hive mind loses all that instability. It's unquestionably united, and would have no need for human ideas like social hierarchy, governments, or even geographical borders. On the one hand, there'd be no freedom, but on the other hand, there'd be no division. And considering that we as a species are prone to a culture shock just when traveling to foreign countries, or to anywhere without the same fundamental roots as our own on a personal level, it's safe to assume that an encounter with any civilization developed on an alien planet could not only surprise the human perspective, but dismantle it. Finally, and with all of this in mind, how about our attempts to communicate with aliens? Sci-fi movies usually feature some kind of ultimately negotiable language barrier, but would it really be that simple? According to the Polish philosopher and sci-fi writer Stanisław Lem, even if we were able to make contact with an alien species, there would still be some insurmountable blocks preventing us from building any meaningful link with it. Writing in his iconic 1968 novel, His Master's Voice, Lem explains how similar all of Earth's languages fundamentally are, even though they can sometimes seem very different. How translations are almost always possible across human cultures because we all at least share the same reference points. We all share the same fundamental mammalian lifestyle on Earth, complete with birth, death, survival, and the earthly passage of time. But it's likely that an alien race won't have those same reference points in quite the same way, and so its language could prove totally indecipherable from the outset. More than that, though, Lem shows how there could be a huge gap in our intelligence, with linguistics being just one part of it. Because what happens if the intellectual difference between our species and an alien group is the same as between, say, humans and a worm? The biology wouldn't matter. The civilization, while interesting, wouldn't matter. And the communication link could seem futile. We know that on Earth, communication between species isn't impossible. Anybody with a well-trained pet would attest to that. But remember that no matter how impressively you teach your dog to sit and fetch on command, it does at least share some reference points with you, its human trainer. An alien wouldn't have those. And of course, if an alien were just one part of a hive mind, then why should it even break rank to recognize you trying to communicate with it at all? It wouldn't do so, because it would automatically, perhaps unknowably, be superior and wildly different to us. Ultimately, we just don't know what to expect. Biologically speaking, sci-fi is awash with what aliens might look like, but the chances are that none of the depictions created so far will turn out to be accurate simply because there are so many possibilities. Socially speaking, we tend to think of human civilization as having evolved to a reasonably high level, but it could easily be dwarfed into insignificance by something not of this planet. And when it comes to communication, it may well be that we'll simply never understand what an alien is trying to say. With all of this considered, what's the biggest surprise that alien life could throw our way? It's a relatively easy question to answer, because the biggest surprise of all would be if, against all the odds and despite all of the infinite possibilities, it actually did transpire that an alien species had evolved to be just like us. While not impossible, the chances of finding anything that's even remotely human elsewhere in space are just so incredibly and fantastically low.
Imagine for a moment, you're an alien. You know all about human beings, given that you're comfortably more advanced than they are, and so you're scouring the solar system in search of an optimum base from which to observe and/or control them. Landing direct on Earth itself is probably a little too risky. So, where's the next best thing? It's, of course, the moon that we're getting at. But the strange thing is that, according to one alternate theory, this isn't an imaginary setup. It's what's really happening. And not only is the moon an alien base, it's an alien spaceship, too. The moon has always fascinated us. Civilizations have looked upon it for thousands of years, wondering what it could be and what power it might hold. It's at the center of countless myths, legends, and even whole religions. There are ideas that the moon can alter our moods and behaviors, some grounded in genuine science and some not so much, while the classic children's quip that the moon might be made of cheese has never really gone away. Unfortunately for all you Cheddar and Edam fans, we know that last one definitely isn't true. But still, not all bizarre moon theories have been passed down and variously added to through ancient history. As recently as 2016, a new theory popped up when a small number of people predicted that the moon would soon turn neon green due to the alignment of the planets at that particular time. But 6 years later, and that never came to pass either. Perhaps one of the most well-known strange moon theories out there, though, is the hollow moon theory. As the name implies, it posits that our moon is actually a shell and that it's empty inside. It isn't a completely unique or novel idea either. The same has been said about the Earth, with a mistaken belief that can be traced back to the famed astronomer Edmund Halley. In 1692, Halley allegedly proposed that the Earth was made up of a series of alternating round shells, with the space in between these shells possibly harboring their own atmospheres and life forms. The modern variations of hollow Earth include that there could be just one large and unbroken cavity down there, housing everything from giants to notorious criminals to, yes, ultra-advanced aliens or lizard people. But back to the moon, and the idea that it could be hollow was first made famous by the author H.G. Wells in his early 1900s novel, The First Men in the Moon. As with many other one-time sci-fi concepts, however, the hollow moon idea gained traction in real-world science too, and then in conspiracy theory. It wasn't long before the theory was advanced into something else, an idea that has come to be known as the spaceship moon hypothesis. And, in fact, another influential science fiction writer, Isaac Asimov, had some role to play in the formation of this idea. It's said that Asimov, like others before him, had mused over the bizarre improbability that the sun and the moon, despite the huge differences between them, should appear roughly the same size in our sky. And this, then, became a major piece of evidence for those who would ultimately claim that the moon was artificial, made by hand, although not by human hand. Asimov wasn't the only one indirectly fueling the conspiracy either in those early days. More apparent evidence was provided by none other than NASA, although not deliberately. Between 1969 and 1972, the Apollo astronauts that walked the moon installed seismometers there to measure any potential moonquakes. Upon recording moonquakes, though, NASA was met with the curious observation that the moon was at times ringing like a bell. Waves of energy reverberated through the moon during a moonquake, quite differently to how they do on Earth during an earthquake, with the leading scientific explanation being that this was due to the comparative dryness of lunar rock. The idea being that, on Earth, water acts as a shock absorber during earthquakes, so quake measurements don't come out in the same way. But, nevertheless, alternate theorists took the moon's ringing as more proof of its actual artificial nature, and furthermore, of it having a hollowed-out core as well. But perhaps the most infamous claim of all emerged at around the same time, in the 1970s again, when two Soviet scientists published a study directly suggesting that the moon was actually the creation of alien beings. A paper titled "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" caused a reasonable stir, claiming, amongst other things, that the moon may have been towed into place in the distant past via a comet, or that it might have actually been built in situ, i.e., in orbit. It has since been argued that the whole episode may have merely been an unusual Cold War attempt by the USSR to undermine and bemuse America. And even the authors behind it have since reportedly admitted that their paper may have been closer to fantasy than fact. But nevertheless, why have people been so prone to rethinking the moon quite so extremely, and especially in the last century or so? The fact that the moon's exact positioning is so essential to how our planet works is perhaps one reason that some are suspicious. What are the chances of it just naturally ending up that way, they ask? And even mainstream science will admit that, really, to have such a perfect balance of conditions here on Earth does appear to be extremely unlikely. Proponents of a hollow moon variously argue that eclipses are also far too coincidental, and that there must be some artificial driver or pilot in play to make them possible. Next question then, if that idea is correct, what are those pilots doing now? Strapped into their moon-sized spaceship, watching our world while almost all of us are totally oblivious to their existence. What are they up to? If they are there, then they've sure been there for a long time. They've yet to really put a foot wrong, too. Besides some inconsistent reports of things like strange lights or markings on the ground allegedly made by some of the Apollo astronauts, and apart from the odd, possibly linked conspiracy theory, such as the Black Knight satellite, there's nothing officially on record to even hint at the moon being anything other than what mainstream science has shown it to be: a large, natural, rocky, and solid satellite to our planet. Still, the fact that science is not yet totally sure on exactly how or when the moon formed is perhaps another reason why alternate moon theories continually appear. The most credible moon formation theory to date is known as the giant impact hypothesis, stating that the moon most likely came about as a byproduct after another ancient and now long gone planet crashed into Earth. Giant impact is today considered a strong theory, but it isn't watertight. Meanwhile, the moon's craters are a problem for some too. There's some argument that they're flatter than they should be, and that they don't penetrate far enough into the moon's surface to meet expectations. As such, some think that there's an interior protective plate or metal shell just beneath the surface, an artificial structure keeping asteroids from properly breaking through. The exact origin of the general hollow moon idea is difficult to trace, but there are occurrences of it in various more localized myths and legends, such as from the Zulu people and other groups in southern Africa, and long before the likes of H.G. Wells, Asimov, the Apollo missions, or the Soviet Union's alien intelligence paper. In some versions of the legend, a hollow moon really was brought to Earth, rather than a regular moon just so happening to form there. And before the moon, Earth had been an entirely seasonless place, playing host to a thick and stagnant atmosphere, until, after the moon's arrival, the rains came, and the floods. Since then, according to some beliefs, it has been as though the moon is watching over humanity, bringing us full circle to the general state of wonder that the moon can elicit from within us. And so, in today's world, versions of the belief still remain, and not only within small groups or as callbacks to an ancient time. It's science fiction for most, but some have faith that a hollow moon and even a spaceship moon is possible. What's your verdict? Be sure to check out the many other videos on our channel, most of which take the more accepted scientific line for our moon, and further ask, what is it? What happens when we went there? And why haven't we been back? There's plenty of mystery even without it being a fake shell to hide a fully functioning ET vehicle. But for now, that's the strange theory that the moon is an alien spaceship. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, another bomb on Nagasaki. Since then, while there have been close calls and threats, no further nuclear weapons have been used. But some believe, on at least one occasion, it was only ET intervention that prevented another devastating attack. In history and science fiction, aliens have been accused of or linked to a range of things on Earth, some good and some bad. The zoo hypothesis claims they're watching over us, charting our progress towards becoming a higher power. The lab hypothesis also claims they're watching us, but only as an often cruel experiment. Various ancient alien theories reckon that ETs built some of our most famous monuments, while there are now countless alien abduction accounts logged officially and unofficially all over the world. All of which leaves us in something of a strange position regarding our perspective of them and their intentions with us. The alien story is embroiled in mystery, intrigue, and excitement, but also suspicion, fear, and prejudice. Most alien abduction reports present the aliens themselves as unemotional and unsympathetic, testing, probing, and roughly discarding their human subjects. They're rarely friendly or helpful, and certainly not on our side. Not all are quite so brisk and inhospitable, though. In 1951, for instance, one Fred Reagan claimed his plane was hit by a UFO, only for the alien pilots to endlessly apologize and even offer to cure Reagan of cancer. So sometimes, it would seem, aliens can be nice. Which takes us to Valiant Thor. In 1967, the ufologist Frank E. Stranges published a book called Stranger at the Pentagon. In it, he claims that he personally met an alien that prevented humanity's destruction, and it's a bizarre story. The tale of Valiant Thor begins in 1957, when it said that he and 3 other extraterrestrial beings, named Dawn, Jill, and Tanya, landed their ship in a field in Virginia. When local law enforcement arrived, according to Stranges, the ET group demanded to speak with the president. And although first they were escorted to a meeting with the Secretary of Defense, they did quickly get their wish, soon sitting down with the US leader at the time, Dwight D. Eisenhower, plus Vice President Richard Nixon. How did Frank Stranges know this? According to him, it's because it was around this point that the Pentagon decided they needed another expert hand to deal with their alien visitors. And so they turned to Stranges, who, again according to him, was at the time a top theologian and authority figure with high-level security clearance. Notably though, Stranges is also said to have believed in aliens before all of this, and to have specifically thought that aliens traveled through the universe with the goal of converting people to believe in God. Stranges was also a preaching Christian. According to Stranges, after he was approached by the Pentagon, he and Valiant Thor quickly became friends. Thor apparently told Stranges all about his purpose on Earth, that Thor and his alien colleagues had come from the planet Venus and were part of an intergalactic high council, but that the council had supposedly seen the United States drop their nuclear bombs during World War II and had grown concerned. It was then explained to Stranges by Thor that their arrival on Earth signaled the start of a 3-year mission to advise humanity away from total destruction. The mission goals included to offer us the technology we need to advise us on nuclear disarmament and to invite us to join the Intergalactic Council ourselves. It then claims that Thor really did stay at the Pentagon for the next 3 years, working closely with the US government. It's said that Valiant Thor himself looked exceptionally human, although he had 6 fingers on each hand. There's even a supposed photograph of him in circulation, wearing a suit with his hair slicked back, appearing for all the worlds to be a regular human person. Thor claims, however, that members of his species could live for up to 500 years. He said they came from Venus and that there were actually many more alien groups out there, unbeknownst to us. Thor also claimed, according to Stranges, that the Intergalactic High Council's wider purpose here was to help humans return to the values of Jesus Christ, who it said was also an alien from outer space. In 2013, a short film adaptation of Strange's account was released, also titled Stranger at the Pentagon. The film states that it's based on a true story, but adds even more to the already spectacular saga. In it, Valiant Thor is approached by an official who hopes to take advantage by using Thor's alien technology to take the US closer to world domination. The shady official then escorts Thor to meet someone else, called the Empyrean, who's the leader of the so-called Secret Shadow Society, which has major influence over global affairs. Next, it's revealed that the Empyrean, at least, does know about other alien species in the universe, and is linked to many of the most evil. And so, briefly, the world is actually placed in more danger thanks to Thor's arrival, caught, as it almost is, in a cosmological crossfire between multiple alien groups. Strange's original claim doesn't really mention any of that. Although, unsurprisingly, even his slightly tamer base story has been met with a lot of criticism. In reality, there are so many hard-to-prove aspects of it, with mostly just one man's word to back them up. The supposed photo of Thor is really indistinguishable from any photo of any earthly human being. Thor's alleged description of living on Venus has struggled increasingly in the face of modern science too, now that we know how hellish the actual environment on Venus is. What's more, there's no tangible evidence that Frank Strange's really was in any position to ever have any level of security clearance. Many more of Strange's claimed credentials have little to no grounding as well. There are some who've supported his account, but their legitimacy has also been questioned. One Harley Andrew Bird supported Strange's, saying that he had worked on the UFO investigation Project Blue Book in the 1950s and 60s, but those claims are unproven. Perhaps the most interesting voice sometimes linked to Strange's comes from Laura Eisenhower, who really is the great-granddaughter of the former president who supposedly met Valiant Thor, Dwight D. Eisenhower, although Laura has come to be widely branded as a pseudoscientist above all. So, ultimately, the story of Valiant Thor has to be taken with an extremely large pinch of salt. The near total lack of evidence is striking. Very few people claim on record to have met Thor, despite his time on Earth seemingly taking him to the heart of the US government. Despite the 3-year stay that Thor and 3 other aliens supposedly had, they apparently left nothing at all to prove that they were here. More than 50 years later, and there's no sign of a ship, nor of a lingering presence. Thankfully, it is true that humanity hasn't forcefully used a nuclear weapon since World War II. But perhaps we don't really have Thor to thank for that. Maybe he will return one day in the future, whenever humanity next needs him. Maybe we should just try our best to keep ourselves from hurting each other. So what's your verdict? Are there aliens in the Milky Way? Could they even be present on our own planet? And if they are close by, then are they a force for good or for evil. If we do ever discover it, if it is ever announced to the public, then a genuine extraterrestrial being or even civilization is sure to be a surprise a minute, and connecting with it could be a defining moment for humankind. Because that's how aliens could be in our galaxy or already on Earth. Isn't it about time we got ourselves prepared? What do you think? Is there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips from Unveiled and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for our latest content.